The topics that we cover in this particular series are the ones which are appearing in daily newspapers, how they can be beneficial for you to increase your knowledge, plus understand the topic and use these in any answer or any discussions or any other interview. Today's topics include an overview of civil war in Sudan, part of our GS1, how the society actually goes for a civil war, and international relations, what is the global picture. So whenever we talk about geopolitical concerns, etc., you can always mention that a civil war kind of situation in certain countries also threaten the global rule-based order. Then comes the second, and that is RBI and digital fintech companies. What are these fintech companies? How are they going to be doing the financial inclusion in India? And what is the basis of that? But RBI actually is saying them to somehow not chase growth that is in high double digit, etc. Third topic is regarding employment in labor-heavy industries now coming down. What will be the effect on society and economy? We will deal with it. Then comes use of artificial intelligence in football. One of the one of the achievement or use cases of AI. Then comes some common ethics related topics, that is GS4. It is in Hindi, but we will be dealing it in English language. Then comes first topic, an overview of the Sudan civil war. When we talk about the Sudan civil war, the current civil war in Sudan goes beyond a simple power struggle. This power struggle actually that is started between two generals has now taken shape of the civil war. It reflects a deep-rooted crisis within the country's governing structure that has been present since it gained independence from the British in 1956. So the country is right now in a phase of civil war. Since independence, the Sudanese have experienced 35 coups and attempted coups, more than any other African country. In the country's southern region, a 56-year rebellion eventually led to the creation of South Sudan. So South Sudan actually was created in 2011. So the 56-year rebellion was and it resulted into the creation of South Sudan. A Darfurian uprising in 2003 was sparked by accusations that the central government was discriminating against the region's non-Arab population. So the non-Arab population that was there, the charges were that the central government of Sudan that time was doing a kind of discrimination against the region's non-Arab population. Non-Arab population. It led to the ethnic killings and continue to simmer. Delving into the history of Sudan, we should understand that the inability or perhaps unwillingness of the successive governments to manage the country's diversity and articulate a shared vision has resulted in unfair distribution of wealth and resources. So this is what happens. So when we talk about why a society goes for a civil war, you should understand that there are certain basic historical injustices. When the injustices are not actually rectified or resolved or taken care of, then the society is divided into multiple segments. When the society is divided into multiple segments, and the people actually who come to power are only doing the justice for the people either belonging to their own community or show some sort of nepotistic tendencies, then it becomes very difficult for that society to largely go on. When we talk about Indian society is so diverse. But what separates us in Sudan or in any other African country or any other country actually which has been under the civil war is the ability of the Indian governments and the judiciary along with the executive to carry along each and every section of the society. Although in India the inequalities are on the rise, but inequalities is on the rise across the world. What separates us and the other countries also that we are a democratic framework. So today, if there are excesses done by one government, the society actually throws that particular government out and it chooses a new government. So that actually what separates us means India than any other country which is having the civil war situation but has the historical roots. Those are same as for India. Another major difference is also the economic viability. Economic fundamentals of our country are strong, and that's why the economic growth actually is allowing every people to indulge not in the loot and arson, but it allows the people to do and productively participate in our economy. Sudan has a population of 49 million people. It comprises 19 major ethnic groups and about 597 ethnic subgroups, speaking hundreds of languages and dialects. Such is the diversity level in Sudan. Sudanese Arab makes the largest single ethnic group at about 70% of the population. Political and economic power and resources are concentrated in the country's center. Achieving peace in Sudan requires a focus on the concerns of marginalized populations in conflict zones and deprived regions. Darfur, South Kordofan, and Nuba Mountains. It also requires addressing the root causes of the armed violence. Among them are issues of marginalization. So the marginalization actually becomes a region where the fractures of the polity are evident, fractures of the society are evident, and because of the discrimination that is meted out in terms of access to resources or welfare benefits, that gets a shape and the civil war breaks out. The issue of marginalization, the relationship between religion and state, governance, resource sharing, land, social justice, and equality at the national level are affected by all these kind of things. The Sudanese government that came to power in 1956 insists on Arab and Islamic identity. The state was based on the principle of Mahadism, an Islamic Sufi order established in 1880s. It was not representative of diverse communities and sought to subject them to the will of the Mahdi's state. It demanded a degree of compliance that many were unwilling to provide. Resistance against Mahdism was also widespread. So in 1989, so from 1956, then comes the period of 1989. In 1989, a new government seized the control of the state under the rule of National Islamic Front. This was an alliance between army officers and Muslim Brotherhood. This brought to power Omar al-Bashir, who was supported by Islamic leader Hassan al-Turabi. So their government also endeavored to establish an Islamic state in Sudan. So the government set up an internal security apparatus which arrested and tortured dissenters. In 1991, the regime introduced a new penal code to impose an Islamization agenda and created the People's Police. Two further developments would create the condition for the war that continues to rage today. The first was in 2003, the decision of al-Bashir regime to enlist Janjaweed militias to quell an insurgency in Darfur. The second decision was the Islamist regime used this new militia to keep the elite in the southern Sudanese army away from the conflict zones in the periphery. In 2013, al-Bashir formally designated these tribal militias as the Rapid Support Forces through a presidential decree. A presidential decree actually designated these tribal militias as the Rapid Support Force. This affiliated them with the National Security and Intelligence Services. In 2017, Sudan's parliament ratified the Rapid Support Forces law. This formally incorporated the militias into the government's military apparatus under the direct command of the president. After protests in 2018 swept through Sudan's major cities, and those protests were driven by grievances around poverty, corruption, and unemployment. So the military intervened in April 2019. It was the intervention of the military. Military removed al-Bashir from power and declared a state of emergency. Despite establishing a transitional military government, demonstrations persisted, demanding civilian leadership. With mediation from the African Union, an agreement on power sharing actually was reached in August 2019. That resulted in a military-civilian transitional administration. Still, including a failed coup attempt was done in the September 2021. A month later, Sudan's top general Abdel Fattah al-Burhan led another coup and that derailed the country's democratic transition. The months leading to the war in April 2023 was marked by civilian protests that were violently repressed and tensions between the army and the Rapid Support Forces leaders. Rapid Support Forces leaders, mind you, are the one actually that were created from tribal militias. So the Rapid Support Forces emerged as a counterbalance to the armed forces. It strategically deployed thousands of battle-hardened fighters to the country's biggest cities, volatile border regions, and economic hubs like gold mines. And as you know, those countries actually which are dependent on the mining activity or has the mineral resources in uh, abundance, these countries have not been able to translate them into a major economic advantage. Reason behind either the regions of the mining are in a very deep challenging areas, or there is a growth of the rent estate. That rent estate actually talks about nepotism and corruption in dealings, and because of that there is no control of the central government of that particular territory where the mining activities are. And because of and if by somehow the mining industry develops, then that mining industry either is starved of the funds or are controlled by the foreign powers. And because of the mineral resources are transported into the other geographies, and the raw material actually is then turned into a secondary material or a ready-made prepared material, and that prepared material comes back to the same country. So the country actually that was having the resources is now paying higher prices for the products to use. So that also creates its own set of challenges. So coming back to the topic, three conditions coalesced to foster the emergence of a militia-dominated state in Sudan: civil strife in Darfur in 2003, support from the Sudanese government enabled the self-styled militias to access financial resources, and third is the ideologically Hemedti portrayed the Rapid Support Forces as a militia representing marginalized Arabs from Sudan's rural and border regions. So this is the Sudanese situation. Then comes Sudan requires a collaborative effort from the international community to aid reconstruction. It needs to establish a transparent, civilian-led government that represents the Sudanese populace and hears their voices in decision-making processes. Urgent action is needed to reconstruct Sudan's post-colonial state as one that includes and safeguards the rights of all. And that's why there is a very safe lesson for Indian or other like-minded countries. The countries actually, those are so diverse. Countries, those are still unequal societies. The countries actually that are still in the developing stage, the countries actually which are majorly dependent on the or majority of the population is dependent on the primary activities, be it agriculture or mining. So the valuable lessons for them is to create a kind of a structure where the diversity is celebrated rather than negated. We should also have a judiciary that can fill in when the rights are subjugated by the executive or the legislature. We should also have any kind of grievances that is met within a time frame. We should also have an active government that seeks the advice of the people or that delivers to the people who are sitting at the bottom state of the society. The remotest corner of the countries are served first rather than those actually which can access and afford the services at their own will. So these are the lessons. We now move on to the second topic, and second topic would depend. We talk about the fintechs and RBI asking them to pursue not to pursue blistering growth. Fintechs are those uh, companies which are providing financial services through technology. So there are companies which are providing financial services, and as we know, fintech companies has been a very major driver behind the growth of the financial inclusion in our country. The financial inclusion in our country has been driven by the financialization or digitalization of the economy. When you talk about the UPI-based transactions or the Jan Dhan and Aadhaar Yojana, all are driven actually by the technology sector. So such is the level of technology and contribution of science and technology in our industry. So, after asking banks and non-banking finance companies to take a calibrated approach to growth, the Reserve Bank of India has signaled fintechs to tamp down. So, in the recently held meetings with the fintech companies, the RBI, that is the regulator, is said to have told many companies, especially those involved in the loan products and operating as a loan service providers, to cut down growth. Cutting down growth of the loans actually is also one of the major drivers where non-performing assets are kept to a minimum level. You must have understood that the banking crisis in 2013, 2014 till about 2020 or 2021 was one of the reason was NPA. Non-performing assets are those assets on which either the interest is due or the principal amount is due for 90 days. Basically, the interest is due for 90 days. And once the default is done, then it becomes a non-performing asset. Once the account is turned into a non-performing asset, then the banks actually have to make sure that some money is reserved for that. The moment the money is reserved for that, that money that could have gone for meeting some sort of, credit growth or other kind of loan books, better loan books, goes only to secure the losses that can be meted out in the future based on the non-performing assets. So this causes the bank's capacity to grow and it limits that. So, RBI's concerns is that despite curbs in the risk weights in unsecured loans, there is little or no moderation in growth. So, loans RBI wants to curb, and curb in the sense that loans cannot be accelerated. They cannot actually, these companies cannot provide loans to without, checking their lower customer details or these kind of things if they are doing so. So, RBI is suggesting them not to chase growth rather than numbers. Target growth at around 15 to 20% is the message given to all of us, has been said by a CEO of a leading of a lending fintech who did not want to be named. Right now, they are chasing growth of around 35 to 50%. Fintech heads and investors are in a huddle trying to work out alternatives. So the fintech sector is once again back with fundraising plans, with clarity emerging on operational aspects such as loss default guarantees. However, the fintech lenders' fast growth and valuation multiples are often linked to quickly loan book expand. You see, the greater the loan book, the major investors actually that, or greater are the investment that a particular company that is in the fintech service can attract. That is the DNA of this fintech industry. But once the fintech industry tries to understand that why RBI is taking such a step, economic sustainability is the major reason. That there cannot be any kind of forbearance where the government does not intervene and the fintech companies actually kept on expanding their loan books. Tomorrow, if the situation arises where the loan books actually are compromised or are not paid back, then they can create a run on those fintech companies. A single run on the fintech companies can be detrimental to the effect of the economy itself. Just remind yourself with what happens with the banks. How much large bank, even a systematically important bank, can be challenged by these kind of credit crises. If there is a run on the bank means when there are certain situations where people understand that the banking financials of that or founding financials of that particular basic financial of that particular bank are under stress, then they chase the bank to get out their money from that particular bank. Such run-in by one person or even say 10 persons can cause a crowd to chase the bank. And that individual bank actually can then be affected by such a role reversal. So the fintech companies also should not meet the same fate. And RBI is asking them after banks and non-banking financial companies. Then comes a third one, and that is export in the labor heavy sector is slowing. So what is the meaning of it? First of all, labor-heavy sectors like textile, leather, gems and jewelry, and marine products are the four high-generating sectors in India. Which one? Textile, leather, gems and jewelry, and marine products. Why they are? Because of whatever, the capital that is invested in these industries, which are labor-heavy industries, the amount of capital that is invested and the kind of jobs actually that are converted by that particular capital is higher as compared to those sectors which are capital intensive but labor unintensive. So when we talk about while India's export have been largely flat, the country's exports from labor-intensive sectors such as textile, leather, gems and jewelry and marine products are seeing a sharp dip. That shipment from these four high job-generating sectors have declined nearly 12%. So the decline has been 12% compared to the pre-pandemic levels 5 years ago. During the last financial year, when overall goods exports shrank 3%, the outbound shipments of textiles, leather, gems and jewelry, and marine products saw a much steeper 9% decline to $78 billion. Struggling to stay afloat in tough times, small and medium-scale textile industry are forced to shut down or let go of artisans, weavers, and workers whose livelihoods depend on the vitality of the textile trade. The mounting global challenges have become increasingly difficult to overcome. The geopolitical tensions and impact of this and demand for textile is much higher in the small and medium textile industry. India significantly trails behind China and the European Union and is also falling behind several smaller countries like Bangladesh and Vietnam. So from 2013 to 2023, Bangladesh garment export grew by 69.6%. Vietnamese grew by 81.6%, and India's grew by only 4.6%. So when we see the impact, how the smaller countries are enjoying the textile business, it is evident. And as a result of this, India's global market share in garments trade has declined from 2015 to 2022. The share of the knitted apparel dropped from which one? Knitted apparel has dropped from 3.85% to 3.1% now, and the share of non-knitted apparel decreased from 4.6% to 3.7%. The Federation of Indian Export Organization (FIEO), in a report on the performance over the last 5 years, says that global trade in knitted garments expanded by 6% at a time when India's exports in the segment declined. In terms of woven garments, the exporters body said that Bangladesh and Vietnam managed to grow 6% and 4% while India's exports remained little changed. So an analysis of the sector-wise export performance for the last 5 years revealed the troubling pattern that India is experiencing a decline in the global market share across labor-intensive sectors. And that actually is very, very difficult to get to. To make the industry more globally competitive, the Union government had already launched Mega Investment Textile Park that is called MITRA program. MITRA means Mega Investment Textile Parks program in 2021 to increase investment and acquire a competitive edge over global competitors. The Commerce and Industry Ministry says that remission of the duties and taxes under remission of the duties and taxes on exported products that is called RODTEP. So there are two schemes. Number one, MITRA Mitra scheme and RODTEP scheme. These were expanded to 18 items to support the textile sector. Bangladesh and Vietnam have seen improving textile market share. The argument is that it cannot be commented because of the lack of availability of such data. So why these are important? These news are important because India is majorly dependent on labor-intensive sectors for its livelihood opportunities. And And these are also important because if India is to bring the people out of poverty and provide people actually, take out people from agriculture, then it is very important for us to diversify in these sectors. Then comes artificial intelligence in football, how the new technology can help take more effective corner kicks. So you can write down that, this is the one of the huge case. Then comes other topic like सेहत ठीक है तो मन रोज काम करना होगा. If you want to keep your health fine and fantastic, then we have to work on our heart and mind every day. And the best part is we have to care ourselves. Number one, we have to control our emotions. That is part of our emotional intelligence. Number second, we have to understand each and everything with very minute detail. Third is we have to also understand what are the effects and reasons behind our own happiness. If we understand what gives us happiness, then we can be able to solve any issues. We also have to understand that what are our limits, because without defining our limits, we cannot experience our happiness. And then comes emotions channeling. We should also channel our emotions not to the negativity but to the positivity. And then comes the next, that तीन सबक जरूरी. So number one, law of attraction काफी नहीं है. So law of attraction is not sufficient. Law of vibration has to be understood. And for that, we have to control the emotions. We have to also limit ourselves. And for that, social life actually is important. And number third, if any kind of decisions are to be taken in life or in our career, then we have to understand in a conscious mind what is good or what is bad for us. So these are the today's topics. If you feel that we were able to deliver good quality content, you can like and share our channel. Thank you.
For more such videos, you can like the button and subscribe the channel. Thank you.